Hi guys, this is John here. Continuing session number 4, where we were looking at the steps taken to make a machine learn, and we looked at the first 3 steps, which were understanding the problem statement, selecting the correct data for your machine, and splitting the data into 2 parts, which is your training data and the testing data. Step number 4 is all about making the machine learn. So if you remember, as I said, that if it's a classification problem or a regression problem, you have to choose your learning method. Your learning method, basically, you will tell your machine how it will learn from the data given. So each of these methods are also called as algorithms. So the word algorithm means a set of steps. So basically, you will tell your machine to follow a set of steps to learn from the data. So effectively, you will tell your machine what method to use for it to learn. So if you want your machine to perform classification, you will make it go through certain learning methods, not all of them. You go one by one. Versus if you are doing a regression, you will go through one by one. Now, do not worry about these names right now. They look very complex, but do not worry about these names. Just understand that each algorithm is a learning method for a machine. That's all you need to understand. And for us, when we make the machine learn, we have to try all the algorithms with the given data, and based on the accuracy, we decide which is the best algorithm. So step number 4 is making the machine learn using an algorithm. And again, as I said, the algorithm is basically a learning method, a set of steps for learning. Okay? Once you've made your machine learn, then you go ahead and apply the testing data. If you remember, we had split our data into 2 parts. One was training data and one was testing data. So you take the testing data and then you test your machine. And why do you test your machine? So that you can evaluate or check how well your machine has learned. So that is very important for us to evaluate or check how well our machine has learned. Now, similar to how a human learns, for a classification problem, we had a confusion table or a confusion matrix. And if it's a regression problem, then we have the concept of average error. So even for a machine, if we are performing classification, the machine will show you a confusion matrix based on which, if you remember, the scores given by our false cells have to be very low, and the scores of our true cells have to be very high. And if it's a regression problem, then the average error has to be as low as possible. So if you remember that depending on classification or regression, Jimmy's results were different. Similarly, here for our machine, we have to make sure that the confusion matrix and the result table for regression, the error has to be as low as possible. Okay, guys? So that was step number 5. Now, depending on how happy are you with these results, you will decide whether your machine is ready for the real world or not. So you have to decide, is my error low enough, or are my error scores here low enough? Once you are happy, you can choose to send your machine to the real world. That's a decision you have to take. But this is the process that we will follow in our AI course on how to make a machine learn. Step number 1 will be to define the problem statement, very important step, where we decide whether it's a classification problem or a regression problem. Classification problem is when you have a fixed number of outputs. Regression is when you have an infinite number of outputs where you have to predict a value. Step number 2 is selecting the data for your machine, where we understood 2 steps, where you select the right type of data and the right amount of data, which is very important. Step number 3 is where we split our data into 2 parts. One is our training data, the other is our testing data. Step number 4 is selecting the learning method for our machine. How will our machine use the training data to learn? And the learning method is also called an algorithm. And we looked at the fact that algorithm means a set of steps. And step number 5 is that we evaluate the learning of our machine by testing its accuracy. And based on how happy we are with our results, we will decide whether we will deploy our machine into the real world or not. Now, let us say you have sent your machine to work with real world data. When I say real world data, actual data coming from the outside, and you are happy that the machine can be used for the real world data. Now let's say once you deployed, when I say deployed, you are using your machine with the outside world. For some reason, your machine's predictions are not accurate. So now the first question you need to ask yourself is, was there a problem with the type of data? Was there a problem with the quantity of data? Did you split the data correctly between training and testing? Was there a problem with your algorithm? Did you properly check the results? And was your accuracy high enough to start with? You have to ask yourself these questions, and this is a cyclic process. You keep going in this circle again and again until your machine is ready for the real world. Okay, so this is very important. You will never get it right on the first try. You have to keep going in this circle, as I said. You have to keep asking yourself this question: is your data the right type? Do you have the right quantity? Have you made the right split between training and validating? Did you choose the right algorithm or the learning method? Did you properly check the results? And is the accuracy of your machine enough for you to be ready for the real world? So you have to go through these steps again and again until you are ready. So these are the 6 major steps to making your machine learn. In the next lecture, we will look at a practical example of how to make a machine classify flowers. And we will be using our Eduvance AI tool, the software tool, and we will also show you how to install that software. I hope this lecture was clear for you guys. Now, before I let you go, I would want you to go through these assignments where I am describing a few problem statements and you have to choose whether it's classification or regression based on the problem statements. And you can pause the lecture here and read through them. The first problem statement is you need to predict the winner of the ICC Cricket World Cup 2023. Second is you need to predict the age of the person. Do not get stuck on this term predicting. I have used the word predicting to trick you as well. Please read through the problem statement to understand if it's classification or it's regression. You have to understand which one is what based on the problem statement. The third problem statement is, can you predict the winner of the general elections in India in 2024? So is this a classification problem or is this a regression problem? Predicting whether the tumor is cancer or not. So you'll have to look at these answers. Can you predict the price of the house or property prices in your area? And number 6, can you predict your electricity bill? So you have to tell us whether this is a classification problem or a regression problem. I'm not going to give you the answers. I want you to think them over. If you have any doubts, you can revisit the parts of the lecture or previous lectures where I have explained the difference between classification and regression. The next assignment is a simple match the column where I would like you to look at the term and match it with the corresponding definition. So for example, what does algorithm mean? Read through these statements and do a simple match the column. So try this. And assignment number 7 is, I want you to revise the steps that we need to take to make the machine learn. So I have gone ahead and put these 7 steps, and the order is wrong here. So you need to correct the order based on your understanding of what I have covered in this session. Okay guys, so I hope these assignments were clear. Please try and solve them because some of these assignment questions will show up on your test. So I hope the concepts covered in this lecture were clear. In the next session, we will look at a practical problem and how do we solve it. I'll see you guys in the next lecture. Thank you.